Push the button, Frank.
We are now
Somebody's gonna call us on that.
on the what part?
On the push the button, Frank thing. I need to quit it.
Well, we are live, so that's
Okay.
that's one factoid.
Okay.
So, how was your week? And
Busy. I'm always busy. I mean, between doctor's appointments and physical therapy appointments, et cetera, and just stuff to do around the house and videos and YouTube and emails and correspondence. And I'm just a busy person. So constantly staying busy.
well, I'm not okay. So I'm saying, let me just check before we get started.
Okay.
Because I have this edit this week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just so as we get started, let people roll in, because this will stay on our channel, but then we'll go ahead and have a release for those of you watching. Usually we start getting into the point, but let's wait till I don't see. Okay, there's Steve. Now I'm starting to see it on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll edit all this out later.
Well, there's quite a bit of lag between them. I mean, I don't know if you get any lag through YouTube by itself, but then you add StreamYard on top of that. There's always quite a bit of lag. So,
Well, we don't want to necessarily admit lag, because the instantaneous thing, that's the magic.
Yeah, well, there's no lag between us. It's just lag with what's going on in the YouTube chat and stuff like that. So,
right.
I've caught that a few times. That's why I jump over. If I see a comment towards me, I'll jump over on the YouTube side and type in real quick and then come back.
Yeah, I see now we've got Steve Nealon, Harneal Media.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Katie Dotson. Let me see. We've got Frankie C&C. We've got Chipped Builds, Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Katie says she hasn't rolled anything in years. Not even a drunk? Come on, Katie. You're losing your touch.
So listen, this episode I designated Edgar Allan Poe. And there is no one that I'm aware. I'm sure there is a surname Poe, but this is actually Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe was born in the 1809, actually, and lived all the way until the 1840s, around 1849. And he was an American writer, editor, and book critic and whatnot. Poe is best known for his poetry and short stories, which, I mean, a lot of us are familiar with. What comes to mind when you think of Edgar Allan Poe to you, Mark?
Oh, gosh, so much. I mean, The Cask of Amontillado to begin with, The Pit and the Pendulum. I mean, it just so many stories, so many poems. The Raven, The Fall of the House of Usher. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. Annabelle Lee. But something that, I don't know, maybe some fans of the genre know or don't know is he basically invented the detective story, the detective adventure genre. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle credits him specifically for more or less giving birth to the genre and inspiring Sherlock Holmes. So
very interesting.
It's there's a lot in there. I mean, a lot in there for somebody that died as young as he did and had a career basically as short as it was.
He died in his 40s.
Yeah,
in like 40 something.
I think he was 40 years old.
Yeah, I think he was 40 exactly or thereabouts. Yeah, he was aged 40. Yeah. But how about what images for you folks, all of us actually, what images come to mind in the head when you think of him and his life? Because I'll just say this, the Edgar Allan Poe title is in reference to something else, but this is kind of like a bouncing board, and it's an interesting topic in itself as it is. because this guy, I mean, this is Americana. This is the birth of a genre horror in writing in the specific way he did. I mean, but Edgar Allan Poe was broke.
Yeah.
And so before we get into that, this is where I was actually going with that, Mark. People that are renowned for whatever reason in literature, the arts, and all sorts of different things throughout history, but surprisingly, maybe to some, were completely dead, penniless, broke, skid row.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like where I was going. And then there's a second part to that. But going back to what thoughts come up as far as Edgar Allan Poe's psyche and all these things, what comes to mind for you, Mark?
Oh, I've already gone down the list. I mean, he was definitely a troubled soul. I mean, his death was attributed to, oh God, probably about a dozen things. I mean, I've heard everything from alcohol to, cholera to heart disease, tuberculosis, suicide. But nobody is really sure how he died. That's just been lost to history.
Well, he died penniless, and he had, I'll read you the specifics here, but there's another, for those of you that are, there's so many different road twists and turns with what I'm about to share that you might or might not know. And I suspect that some of you might not know. So let's see if we can surprise you or not, or at least spark some curiosity. And I don't know that Mark might know this as well, but we're always surprised with what Mark knows, might not know, or might be interested, not interested. We'd never know, and that's the fun of it. But here's some interesting things to stimulate the noggin, okay? And before I get to the specific, I just wanted to say that Poe, what I'll read here, and they do say that some people attribute his death to all sorts of things, like Mark just said, rabies, carbon monoxide even, and just all sorts of poisoning and just a whole assortment of things. But he did die young. And here's the thing, he has become a legend, an American legend. Poe died on October 7th, 1864, and he had only earned, check this out, earned $274 that year up to the time that he passed away, which would be about, in today's figures, roughly $4,481 in like 2019. We're in 2020, but you get the gist. So he made less the year before, and all the while he was trying to support his family, so he began a life early on in order to focus solely on writing as a career to supplement, or actually to live. And so he's also like, that's a big deal because of that. He died poor. Here's the bit that I wanted to add to it, Mark, unless you have something to say, but here's the interesting thing that I was going to throw at you guys that you've not heard.
Okay.
But if you have something, go ahead.
No, go for it. I'm following your leader.
Here's the twist. Not associated. Did you know, and I'm going to be shocked here, did you know that Sylvester Stallone, when asked who his artistic inspiration is, he always says Edgar Allan Poe. And did you know that since the time that he was a teenager or early adult, Sylvester Stallone has been a screenwriter, and he has been working on, for the past 50 years, a script for a movie on the life of Edgar Allan Poe that he's drafted and redrafted, added, subtracted from, that is known throughout all of Hollywood, and nobody has picked it up. People say it's good. Other people know it's not the right time. Actors everybody knows and is aware of it.
So when is the right time? I mean, he died in 1849. When is the right time?
When asked, when Sylvester Stallone was asked about this,
Uh-huh.
he said that he would put it in the hands of different, companies that do this sort of thing,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the industry,
Uh-huh.
and they would say, yeah, but there's no, so where's the action, and adventure, or where's the this or that? And he says, well, this is a writer, and the way he wanted to plan it out was that it had two phases: Poe going into a dreamlike state where he envisions the stories, and his dreary normal life, because you could go and see the house that he lived in, this wooden thing, just raised slightly up off the ground, not small but not big by any means.
Right.
It just, so he wanted to bring that, and he's been working on it. A lot of people underestimate Sylvester Stallone because of his speech and sort of like that tough Rambo and all that, but he actually wrote Rocky. He wrote a lot.
He's written a lot of screenplays.
Yeah, he is an intellectual or an artist on the artistic side, and whatever else that includes. But he is a disciplined individual by far, and Edgar Allan Poe is his idol when it comes to the inspiration, because of that darkness.
That I didn't know.
Oh, it's an insane twist. And last bit about this. Remember, the subject today is famous people, historically famous, but were dead broke. But Poe alone has branched, like the 7 degrees of, or is it how many degrees of separation?
6 degrees of separation, yeah.
Yeah, so Sylvester Stallone wanted to play Edgar Allan Poe in his movie early on, and then eventually realized the role wasn't good enough, and he would even he would even sort of like demean himself in public, saying, well, could you imagine me as Edgar Allan Poe? Hey, yo, and the crowd would laugh, and he would sort of self-deprecate, but the point is that this guy's a brilliant guy, Rocky Balboa, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And his connection to that was the inspiration. The way he found Edgar Allan Poe, he ran into a library in New York, and he was directed at the archives in at the bottom level or whatever. And he went down there to get away from the rain or something, and he sat down to study, and he found Poe, and he said he fell in love with him all that time. But Poe was a broke individual that affected the lives of culture beyond his possibly even imagining.
Wow. See, I would have never even have made those connections. I would never even have thought of that. It's just, it's strange where people get inspiration from. It's strange where people draw their muse from, but to think that, wow, I don't know. That's just kind of, it blows me away is what it does.
It's a mind-blowing story.
Uh-huh.
I will see if I can find for you guys. There's a documentary on Sylvester Stallone and his timeline with him speaking and the narrator narrating what the story is. If you're interested in that, it is pretty interesting for people of a creative, slant, because it shows Sylvester Stallone in a different light, and it talks about Edgar Allan Poe, and it unites those two figures from different decades, centuries, let's say, or two different centuries,
Sure.
One after the other. And so it's a very interesting thing. So yeah, I wanted to say that, but our subject is poor, and I have a list of them. But I any thoughts on that whole bit?
Well, you mean wrapping up the discussion about Poe himself and then Stallone with it? I know, a lot of people put they think of Stallone, they think of Rocky,
Yep.
and maybe they'll think of Rambo and things like that.
Yep.
What they're forgetting was that was not Sylvester Stallone. Those were characters
Mm-hmm.
that he was playing and portraying.
Exactly.
And he would kind of put on that slow, dullardish, kind of bewildered, persona as a part of his act. I mean, that's not the real man. So
By far.
yeah. I had no idea he went that far into Poe, though. I that just kind of wow.
It is an amazing journey, and that particular video. And we're not talking about. He has clips that you can find spread throughout the internet where he takes and he films or live broadcasts. Well, this is my script that I've been working for the past 50 years, and as you can see, this is my passion. And he keeps working it and reworking it for 50. It's an obsession.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing, actually.
Well, I'm just wondering why the delay. I mean, because you can work on something too much. I mean, I know he said that it's just not the right time, or people have said it's not the right time, but when is?
Well,
I mean,
see, that whole bit, it's kind of like, there's a sort of ocean of people out there that have these talents and all these goodies to share with humanity that could inspire. And I've always run up. So look, I'm going to say this to you. I have always been of the mind that you put it out there, you create and you put it. And sometimes you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't this, but and then you work it out and you put something, and it's not your best work and it's not your best this, but you're putting it out there, and you're putting it out there, and you're creating, and you're doing. And I've always been of that mind where you're creating. And there was a time originally where I would like create, and then I'd say, well, eventually, and there's a place for that. But to share and maybe touch another person, not because of anything other than you open up a doorway in your specific way for that person to say, oh my goodness, look at that. Okay. And that's valuable in itself,
Right. Okay. But 50 years he's been working on this. 50 years. How much better is it really going to be?
Oh, here's the
50 years.
You're right. Here's the second part to that. I have recently, if you noticed, I haven't done a lot of woodworking, making videos. I've gotten to a point where you have to also believe. I've gotten to a point where right now I'm interested in documentary and this and that right now. And I could either be not selfish and do what I've always done, but for who am I doing it? I got to do things because I enjoy them, and so I do. So I've come to the conclusion that I do things but certain things I won't put out. So you go through what Stallone could be trapped in that vortex of he doesn't want to let it go.
That's got to be it. That's got to be it, because that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, yes, more information comes up about him. I don't know how regularly, but I mean, more information comes up about everybody.
Yeah.
Little by little, in spurts, in dribbles here and there. But I still think that 50 years, I mean, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that, literally and figuratively. At what point do you stick a fork in it to see if it's done?
He was asked, exactly, but he was in one interview. So he's not, here's another thing. He's not aware of that angle that we are talking about, that you're mentioning right now. Yeah. So he's completely, here's another problem with human beings, is that they could be in total awareness of these issues that prevent them from, and their intellect, they can see intellectually, but they're stuck with it because of whatever. I mean, it's that taking that next step. Let me just say this. He mentioned, when asked about the rewriting, he said, listen, You know, how many times are you going to redo it? And he says, listen, I have noticed throughout time that when you're novice and that it's the first time you sit to write that particular story, that those first instincts were the truest, that sounded the most authentic, even with their errors. It's actually portraying the spirit of the thing. So he's aware of that.
Okay. So he still hasn't made the movie, though.
Right.
And that's the thing. Well, it's getting to because he's not a young man.
No.
Now, not wishing any ill will on anybody, but one of two things is going to have to happen fairly soon. Or take that back. One of two things is going to happen fairly soon. He's either going to make the movie, or he's going to hold on to it and hold on to it and hold on to it, and somebody else is going to make the movie after he's gone. And he won't have any input other than the script or the story. He won't be able to see his creation come to life. So it's getting to those, look, something's going to happen here shortly. Which do you want it be?
See that you said, there's a twist into that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. See, Edgar Allan Poe's life was depending on how you look at it, Edgar Allan Poe's life was Edgar Allan Poe's life from his vantage point.
Uh-huh.
And he could have seen people walking along in the 1800s with better circumstances than he could have figured maybe someday. And he just kept trekking along, so it wasn't that severe, except for it was that severe because he was below the poverty line. But maybe Stallone, with that in mind, because he knows his life, is to some degree content with never making it and knowing.
Okay, fine. Then quit shopping it around.
And knowing that it will be made
by somebody else.
Because,
yeah, okay,
you know what I'm saying? Could be. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. Anything's possible. So he doesn't want to do it himself. Let somebody else do it. But then you never see the fruit of your labors. I don't know. I've been of the opinion forever that an unused talent is a useless talent. So, I mean, you can be the absolute best artist in the world, but if you're the only one that knows it, what does it matter? So you've created this masterpiece, but you're the only one that knows it. So what does it matter?
I mean, see, that's the whole thing about this whole discussion, that there's people that in their lifetime didn't, in that context, didn't matter.
But the difference is Poe sold his works. Poe had his works published. He didn't make a lot of money on them. That's absolutely true. And they weren't seen as literally
a value like that.
They weren't seen as important in a literary sense during his lifetime.
Right.
And that has happened to a lot of folks. I mean, most of the great masters didn't sell many of their paintings at all during their lifetime. Exactly. I mean, stories are told about cases like that all the time. Actors weren't recognized for their brilliance until after they were gone, or, James Dean being an example, or authors not really seen for what they really were during their lifetime. Case in point, Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. When that book was released, when that book was first published, you know how many copies it sold?
No.
500.
And that's good day.
500 copies. That's all it sold. But what made it jump was somebody looked at the story and said that would make an excellent play. And they adapted it to a play and performed it in theaters. Mm-hmm. That's what gave it the jump start years after it had been published. But it was a major flop as a book until theater sparked the interest in it. So,
I mean, and like, I'll just hit you with, so on that same vibe, Vincent van Gogh died broke.
Yeah.
He did sell some paintings, but he, in his life, You could basically stamp him with he would stamp himself with not successful, because he simply didn't have the renown that we all now attribute, and it's historical. He didn't know it. He never knew it. Bela Lugosi, super famous on another extreme, he died broke.
Yeah.
And
and ended up being like second and third, bit players in some of the Best of the B movies. Did some movies for Ed Wood and things like that. That just, this guy was a serious actor, but just died broke.
Oscar Wilde, broke. But people knew of him. But the point is, broke. Tesla, revolutionary in electricity, and broke. I mean, Judy Garland is part of the list here. Broke. Charlie Parker,
$4 million in unpaid debt. Judy Garland owed $4 million when she died.
So it's like, losing it or being broke or struggling. But so that's one thing. But then there's the issue of people creating works and never being successful with it in their lifetime.
Right.
But then becoming this phenomenon. I don't know if you've heard it directly, but the saying, more or less, kind of, sort of, is that, wait till the painter croaks, and then the paintings will be worth something.
Then it'll be worth some money. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like a really screwed up trade-off.
Yeah. I mean, Mickey Rooney, one of the biggest stars of the 30s and 40s, had $18,000 to his name when he died. I mean, God, just Marvin Gaye. He died serious drug addiction, wiped out his bank account. When he died just penniless, broke. Gary Coleman, what you talking about, Willis?
Yeah.
His parents stole his money. And he ended up suing his parents and agents and a whole bunch of different lawyers for mismanaging his money and what have you. He was awarded well over $1 million, something like that. But he made a bunch of mistakes, and I mean, he ended up being a mall cop.
I mean, that's a really harsh, when you see people that have had this amount of popularity, let's say, and with it comes this financial compensation through the marketing aspects and all these things, to see it all go in a certain direction. I mean, these are things that we can't. The variables are so extreme. We can't put our finger on what it is. But some people just go from the topmost straight to the gutter. Some people even go into the gutter and back up. Other people never go anywhere. There's such a wide variety of circumstances. But I'm quite fascinated with the angle of people that do focus on this type of certain work. And then they bite the big one.
Oops.
And then through history, somebody picks up, the work, and it ends up in a gallery, let's say for a painter. They research the name, the value starts going up. Well, let's find out about his life story, his or her life story. And then boom, it becomes, and the person, he was struggling to get oil paints, off the corner market. And they were probably saying, oh, here comes old Vincent van Gogh again. Yeah. He's such an annoying,
What's he going to try to trade for paint this time?
Yeah. Can you believe this guy? He's coming down. And where if he were alive today without that, with all the knowledge of people, he'd be like renowned. It's just the irony of history.
Yep. I mentioned Mickey Rooney a couple of seconds ago as a brief diversion here. Katie Dotson says, wasn't Mickey Rooney one of the Little Rascals? Mickey Rooney, as far as I know, was not one of the Little Rascals, but the Little Rascal that played Mickey, the guy that played Mickey in the Little Rascals, was Robert Blake, who went on to play Beretta and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
He was Mickey in the Little Rascals. I don't think Mickey Rooney was one of the Little Rascals, though.
Very interesting. I'll tell you what I am doing right this second, and I'm gonna take, and this is for the listeners, and that Sylvester Stallone, Edgar Allan Poe documentary, which lasts about a good half an hour. I'm going to go ahead and put it in because we have a Facebook page, and it's called Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And we do add a lot of our conversations and the videos or art or write-ups about what we talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and post that there. You guys can go over there and check that out. And we do also have a website. Yeah, Mark?
Oh, yes. We have the Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com. That's where we post all of our current episodes. It's where we have and store all of our past episodes. You hit that link right up in the middle, marked Wayback Machine. You click on that link and it starts with the current episode and goes all the way back to episode 1 before when our hair was the correct color, before it started turning gray and all this round here was green fields and wide open spaces. And we were young bucks who didn't know what we were doing, much like today, just younger. So head on over trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
And we also have our Spreaker page. But like Mark said, you can check out our episodes right from there, or you could go to the Spreaker page. But we do have that Wayback Machine button, which will take us through those past episodes. So, and we're also sponsored or in association. I don't know how Steve likes to, with Harneal Media.
That's we sponsored.
Okay. Well, no, I don't know, because last time there was, or maybe in my hallucinations, I don't know how we.
Well, we're not sponsored by the Makers Media Network. We're each individually members of the Makers Media Network, but TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com is sponsored by Harneal Media for all your website needs.
That's right. They will set up a personalized website. It's a very easy way to go about it, and you'd be better off going there than the big name brands, which are very. You'd be hard pressed to find help. Well, this is a very personalized, community oriented company. So Trampled Under Harneal Media.
Harnealmedia.com. That's right.
So another angle to this whole thing, Mark, is that there's people that by hook or crook become this world-renowned figure because of something that occurred or that they were involved in or did, that all of a sudden becomes this huge deal. And I'll give you a few of, and this is what I was tying in. I'll give you some names. A virtually unknown person that basically has become a household name known would be, let's say, Rosa Parks. Wouldn't give up her seat. She put her foot down, let's say. She was probably just completely tired of the whole thing, and she decided to go for broke. And through no imagination possibly in her mind that simple act of that human spirit would create a history and a future where she is named.
Basically sparked a revolution. It was long overdue. But just as one person standing up and saying no, or sitting down and saying, no, I've had enough. I mean, yeah, Who could imagine that? I know, she didn't imagine that. And she knew the repercussions. She knew what was most likely going to happen.
Yeah.
But she was making a statement, and that statement was heard around the world.
Just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Well, I have a few. Let me see a few others. Let's see here. How about the guy that stood in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square?
Tiananmen Square. Yeah, I don't know that I ever heard anything about him other than he was promptly arrested. That's all I have ever heard about him.
Yeah.
Don't know the man's name. Don't know anything about his family. Don't know anything about him. But that was an iconic photograph, and it was weird and wild to watch it happen live on television.
I mean, it's like that human being, flesh and blood, standing in front of this huge machine of crushing power. Mm-hmm. He created a situation, and a photo was snapped, and we don't know who he is. I'm sure that we could find out. But
there is video out there, because I mean, the tank stopped and then it started to move, but it didn't matter which direction that tank started to move to go around him. He would step in front of it,
yeah,
and follow it and stay right in the middle, right in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And until some people came out, grabbed him, and pulled him off, drug him off to the side. But wow.
Yeah. So, the theme that I wanted to sort of explore is well, obviously what we've explored is that, through the passage of time, people, whatever their work or, efforts are, at whatever level, you may be creating things that to your mind are just your normal day to day, or with the intent of it being a successful thing, or it already being a successful thing. Well, you are not, the doors are not open for you or any of us to what the future will be. So we don't know what impact certain things that you do will be in the greater scheme of things in the future, near future, further down the line, or whatever. And so I just find the whole concept fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for all you know, just one thing. I mean, look at the road. What is it? The on PBS, the road show.
Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah, they bring in stuff all the time, and your grandfather was so and so, and he made this tapestry because old lady Matilda down the way. Yeah, and there's a whole history of it, and families say, "Oh my goodness!" So it's just a beautiful thing to think of the possibilities of what will happen.
There are 3 stories that I like, and you're talking about one of my favorite shows. There are 3 types of stories that I like on Antiques Roadshow. The person who comes in who is so full of herself and gets told that, their $300,000 object is a fake and worth about $50. Yeah. I love those because I like to see the pompous get knocked down to size. And the other one is the person who has something in the family, whether they were related to whoever made it or not, but they didn't know the whole story about it. They were told a few things here and there, but then get totally blown away by what this actually is, whether it's the value is there or not. They just get blown away by what it actually is.
Yeah.
And then the other story I like is like this one particular guy who bought a chair that morning. He brought it in instead of what he was going to bring. He bought a chair at a yard sale that morning. He paid $2 for it. And it was like a federal chair from the 1700s worth about 15 grand.
Amazing.
And he paid $2 for it that day. I love stories like that. Somebody bought this at a thrift shop and it's worth $2,000. I mean, I love stories like that.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes they come in with like a snotty handkerchief from the 1800s. Look at this crusty thing, and they look at it and they say, "Oh, this is from that soldier up in New England, and this and that. So keep this snotty rag because it's
Well, there was this one lady, and I think it's probably my favorite appraisal that came in on Antiques Roadshow. It was a lady who brought in certain pieces. Her father was a missionary over in China. And while he was, or excuse me, her grandfather was a missionary in China. And while he was over there, he would buy these artifacts, these jade pieces, and he displayed them and everything. And when it was time for him to come home, he brought them home. And she brought in a selection of a few pieces, and there were like 5 or 6 pieces that she brought in. And the guy started going down the list and just telling her, well, this marking, this is this, and this marking, it was done by this guy, and this is an imperial marking, and we can trace it directly back to this. Those 5 pieces were worth well over $1 million.
Amazing.
And he starts pointing out, well, that one there, it's got a value of about $230,000. And she just, what? No, she gave him a weird look like, what? And he says, so just these pieces right here, and you have more? She says, oh yeah, we have 45 or 50 more back at the house. And he says, well, these pieces right here are worth a little over $1 million. And she just kind of sat there silent for a good 5-6 seconds and went, damn. Just like that. Damn.
So will you be keeping this in the family?
And it just absolute. She was just stunned, shocked. That's all she could say was, damn.
Yeah. That person.
Well,
they're calculating. They're like,
oh yeah, it was her and her brother had owned this collection.
Yeah.
So what they ever did with it after that, I don't know. But it's like, damn.
Well, that damn that's an indication. They're like, holy smokes, let's go ahead and buy a car or some.
Well, I looked it up on PBS because they flashed a little graphic more on PBS, and they had a little after the show was over interview with her, and she was still stunned. She's just like, when he started rattling off numbers, I had no idea what he was talking about. He couldn't be talking about this stuff. No way.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, there's things that exactly that like that you'll look at and you're like, this is total hogwash.
Yeah.
I'm gonna toss this. And see, there's a danger in that.
Yeah.
Because if you are aware of the possible value of things that might appear like junk, you could fall into the trap of hoarding.
Oh yeah.
And if right?
Oh yeah. And that would be an easy thing to do because people equate age with value, and it's just not the case.
No.
And I didn't mean to derail off into this, but just because something is old doesn't mean it's valuable.
No.
And I was telling you a few days back about like the Singer treadle sewing machine.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody either has a Singer treadle sewing machine, or if not, there's one in the family, or if they don't have one in the family, they know somebody who has at least one in their family, because so many millions of those things were made. And you can buy an absolutely pristine, 100% complete Singer treadle sewing machine in perfect running condition. You can pick and choose for $200. Antique shops don't want them. They turn away more treadle sewing machines per year than they know what to do with. There's just no value to them because they made so many of them.
Yeah, if it's something that's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Then it loses its it's like, it loses its value because you can get it anywhere.
Well, it's simple supply and demand. I mean, well, first of all, it was patented in 1851 and went into production not long after that. And they opened one factory in Scotland, and that factory by itself, at its peak, employed 16,000 people. And from 1882, when it opened, to 1948, when it shut down, that factory alone shipped 36 million sewing machines. And they had a factory They had one in the US, they had the one in Scotland, they had two more in Europe, they had 3 or 4 in Africa, and 5 or 6 in Asia. So they were shipping these things worldwide. They literally sold billions of those things. There's just no value to them.
Well, in keeping with what you're talking about now, which it all works if you think about it. You could connect anything with anything in the way I see things. To me, everything is connected, honestly.
Yeah.
The way I look at life, and I in a broader sense, everything is freaking connected, man.
Sure.
And so the way I see this connected is through value, the age, passage of time, production, just all that. So I see it connected with what we started with. But last week at some point, not on the podcast, we did have a discussion roundabout involving a couple of things within the same genre, and that was TVs and the price drop in TV sets.
Oh yeah.
Nowadays. And we talked a little bit about that. And you mentioned something about M&Ms as well, and which I found super interesting. But before, if you want to share that, I think it's interesting. But I just say that I did watch a documentary after the fact about TVs. And it's funny. I never typed in anything about TVs, but they heard us. The Google systems heard us, and YouTube started to offer TV style documentaries and electronic stuff and all sorts of stuff. So that's another thing that we're involved with or hit with in this current day and age. And guess what? Sometimes they're successful. Like they were in the case of me seeing that documentary about TVs, and they just briefly, they say that the prices have dropped dramatically, which we did talk about.
Right.
The other day I went to Walmart and saw like a quadrillion, inch TV for like $200.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were bringing out from the storehouse even more, rolling them out in carts, and they were sitting all down the aisles. And it was just crazy, Well, what I wanted to say is that the documentary explains one way or one reason that TVs have dropped the way they have. And I'll get to that, but why don't you share?
All I was just going to say was, why they were hauling those TVs out in such huge volume?
Why?
Because this week is the biggest TV sales week of the year, especially large screens, because it's the week before the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah.
So they bring out all of the big stuff, but you're absolutely right. I can remember my parents paying $500 for their first color television set. Now, that was in 1976, and $500 was a lot of money in 1976. It was huge money. But now we're thinking about getting a larger TV for the living room. And I said, well, maybe we can afford a $250 price tag. Let's look and see how big of a TV we can get. We can pick and choose amongst brands up to 50-inch.
Yeah.
For $250.
Yeah. Or less. Be careful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There were some in there for $240, some in there for $230.
We're going to be in trouble.
It's just crazy. The prices have dropped.
You know when we're going to be in trouble in the society? And it's round the bend. Is when you take a stroll in some, large city across America or the world for that matter. And you'll see these shopping cart, the homeless with the shopping carts and like the rags and stuff like you see in the movies, with the shopping cart with a huge 50-inch TV set perched on top of it. So they have the TV, they can watch all the essentials are like non-existent because of the imbalance of things.
I expect it. I expect it because it's a case of that they're so ding dong cheap, and try to give one away. I mean, we've got two cathode ray tube, the old CRT televisions.
Yeah.
Still in perfect working order. They work great. Color TVs.
Mhm.
We don't use them. And we tried to give them away. Tried to give them to my grandkids. They don't want them. Why? Because we've already got flat screens.
Yeah, nobody wants them.
Yeah. I mean, Goodwill won't take them. The thrift shops won't take them. I'll strike that brand name there. They don't want them. They just, no, we can't get rid of them.
I mean,
so you've got all this electronics that nobody wants, and it still works perfectly well. Yeah.
Well, here's the bit.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the documentary, one of the reasons that they said that the prices have dropped dramatically, not barring all the other possibilities, but they shared one particular, is that now you will notice that the majority of the TVs that are being pushed, the way they're making money, is that these TVs are smart TVs.
Right.
And they all include tracking software that will send signals back to manufacturers with data. Now, they do mention they don't collect particular data, but in bulk. But using IPs, if someone really wanted to find out specifically, they could trace back to the person, and let the wah-wah 70s music playing in the videos start. So they're sort of like balancing their earnings using that to sell for advertisers and collections of data and whatnot. So that's the trade-off. So they mentioned that whole sort of
right
thing.
But then they also didn't mention the fact that people are now putting VPNs on their routers that they're plugging their smart TVs into, which gives a fake IP address. So all of that data is just for naught. They're not collecting it anymore. I mean,
that is a good point.
It started with VPNs on computers, and then they came out with apps to put a VPN on your, I'm running a VPN through, we've each got a tablet, we've each got a phone, we've each got a laptop, and we have 3 PCs all on VPN. And, so long as you're running that VPN, you're running through that VPN, it's not tracking a thing.
But if you had to guess the population at large, they would not have.
Most folks aren't. Right.
So that's where but
it's getting more popular.
Yeah. So that's a way to protect.
Yeah. And some of the streaming services like Netflix, they recognize certain VPNs and reject them. You can't connect to Netflix with some VPNs. Others have found a workaround that's incorporated in the software. You can still watch the streaming services, Netflix just being one.
Right.
So, I mean, but some of them come with things like Roku and what have you. So,
I mean, we touch on, see, I don't even fear going in this, but I will mention it out loud. We've touched on this, but I have not watched a proper through TV network TV programming in over a year. I mean, the last time, I don't know if it was that my internet went down, and so I said, okay, well, let's try the regular TV, and they had some sort of cooking channel or some other thing, and I watched that. But the idea of having to watch what's given to you is so limiting. Even that they used to say back in the day, even back in the 90s and before, nowadays in our modern time, we have our choices from 100 and something channels, and this is even that is so antiquated from what we have today, which is on demand what your brain decides to think that you're interested in.
Yeah.
At the touch of a mouse, you can go down that rabbit hole.
Sure.
And there's just no competing with that as far as programmed, television.
Absolutely none. I mean, nobody has time for appointment television anymore. I mean, you and I were brought up on it. We were raised on it. If you wanted to watch, pick a show. If you wanted to watch Home Improvement, you watched one episode, and when that was done, you waited, and then the next one was on next week.
Right.
And if you had a particular favorite episode, tough. If you planned ahead, maybe you could catch it in reruns later on, because they would make like 26 episodes and then have play them back for the following, year, and then the new season would come out. But now they're putting up whole seasons of shows on the same day just to try to keep people there to watch them, because people don't want to wait a week to watch Deadliest Catch. They want to see the whole season now. And they'll probably record it to watch it later, or using the streaming services, they'll just put them in a playlist and watch them at their convenience when they want to watch them.
Here's a, and I don't know if I'll be able to say it right, but here's a brain buster, like breaking down those doors into where we're placed in time and space. Okay. Generationally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other day, and I'm sure you've seen something similar to this. Mm-hmm. The other day I was surfing the web on YouTube, and I came across this old music video. Mm-hmm. And mind you, old means like 4 or 5 years ago. So It was like 2005 or 2004, whatever. And I watched it. It was like a big hit back then. By the views, you could tell.
Yeah.
And I watched the video. I said, "Oh, look at this." Okay. Just simply on a visual and music. And I said, "Let me read through the comments." And I started reading the comments. And I ran across the comment that said, "I was 13 years old when I saw this. I'm now, whatever age." And he's like, and then another comment, "I was so-and-so years old when I saw this, and now they're adults."
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're talking about a video that, to me, is like, sure, it's a few years in the past, but it's not, 1984 Van Halen.
Yeah.
And they're talking about it like, hey, look, and that's their reference point.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I mean, I fell down that rabbit hole myself. Just for some reason the other day, I got a wild hair. See what I did there? Rabbit hole hair. Okay. And said, I haven't listened to Peter Frampton, Do You Feel Like We Do, from the Frampton Comes Alive album in a long time. Frampton Comes Along? Okay. Yeah, that was the sequel that didn't sell very well. Anyway, so I, brought it up on YouTube and I started listening to it. And I, just like you, I started scrolling through the comments. And it's like, man, I remember when this came out. Man, well, this is cool. I've never heard of this guy. And this, they ran the gamut from all this, that, and the other. And I sat back and I thought, this is one of the albums when I was in high school you had to own. If you didn't own that album, Frampton Comes Alive, you were nobody. You were just out of it. I mean, you weren't going to have any friends. The minute they found out about it, it'd be like, oh, you don't have that? Well, okay. That kind of thing.
It's an amazing thing to think, that generationally.
But I am kind of encouraged to see so many young people discovering that kind of music. It's just like, whoa, man, this is cool. Yeah, you think that's cool? Listen to the whole album.
I don't know how to. I can honestly tell you that I'm completely in the dark about what things mean currently in reference to music, because I personally, being of that time when you had to keep the record, you had no choice.
Yeah.
Once you opened it, in fact, once you opened a record,
it was yours. Yeah,
it was yours. You couldn't really, because they knew that you could dub it and all that.
Unless there was a defect. If there was a defect, then they would take it back.
Right. So you could, go around that. But at least myself, I never returned an album. Like, they put it out there so much that, if once it's broken, the plastic's broken or this or that. Mm-hmm. So, and sometimes you take a knife and try to sort of rig it and this and that just in case, but not to no avail, at least in my case. But I don't know nowadays, me myself being of that time where you had to keep the record, I can't nowadays sit through an extended period of just one musical, like a recording.
No,
I could, but I'm more prone to doing what people do nowadays. And it's really ruined for me, but I have a choice, but I don't want to. So I do what the internet, I click on through. I go to the next thing. I bounce from here to the Tibetan, like, monks chanting, or, like, I don't know, underwater scuba diving, and to whatever. And I don't know I don't know what kids, how it's going to work out, where the consumption of one full piece of music, one takes it in, and it's a work in itself, and that sort of challenges you, or makes you opine on, what it means, and just all that. So it's more like a disposable type of environment that we're living in.
It's push button music again. We're back to the radio in the car. Song comes on, you don't like, push the button, change the channel. Let's find something we do.
Yeah.
Mass consumption, quick, instant gratification. Hear the song, move on. Here's the next one. Now you can load up the playlist with all your favorite tunes on it. And no, let's mix this up a little bit. Put it on shuffle and off you go. You got it all playing. You're not putting on Dark Side of the Moon, then flipping it over to hear side 2.
I mean,
it's strange.
Yeah.
But, I'm sitting here talking about all this stuff, and I'm not telling anybody out there anything they don't already know. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about how people watch TV. You know how you watch TV. You don't need me to tell you that.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm just, it just still, because I can remember as an adult, we've got a TV in our bedroom, as an example, that is about 15 years old. It's a big CRT. I bought the widescreen model because I saw the handwriting on the wall. Everything was going to widescreen instead of the old 4:3 aspect ratio. So, and at first, my wife did not like that widescreen. She liked the square screen that everybody grew up with.
Right.
And no, you watch, everything's going to go widescreen. Everything's going to go widescreen. And we were buying that. The salesman was telling us, you're crazy for buying something that's CRT. I said, I can trust this technology. Plasma screens, I don't even know that LED screens were out yet. But I said, plasma screens, you're already on the 3rd generation, and they've been out for less than 3 years. They burn out. People are having problems with them, and they're expensive. I mean, the TV we got it's a 30-inch screen, CRT, and we paid $600 for it. Back then, at that time, the plasma screen that was a 30-inch was $2,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not paying $2,000 for something that you think is going to last half as long as this TV set's going to.
Right.
And the only reason we bought one is because ours broke. So we didn't have one,
I mean,
so that's why it just kills me at how cheap they are now, because I can get almost double the size for half the price. So, what can you say? But it's funny. Cars have quadrupled in price. You can't find 3-year financing anymore like it used to be. Now it's out 5, 6, 7 years. That's how people can afford to drive an $80,000 truck. It's like $80,000. Geez, that's 2/3 of what I paid for the house I'm sitting in right now.
to me, all that, honestly, it's all ridiculous. And to me, people have to drive, and people have to live, and people have to, but to me, that whole thing about, indebted here, indebted there, indebted here, indebted, it's just, everything. No, I'd rather open the door, the passenger door, stretch, and that can be fixed. So, and we've talked about this, but the examples there, live within, to me, that's my personal, and it's not shiny and a glorious type thing, but at least you don't have the pressure of long extended,
Yep. I'm driving a 23-year-old Saturn, and my total debt other than my monthly utilities is like $300. I don't have huge credit card bills. I don't owe nobody nothing except the mortgage on my house, my monthly utilities.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, screw that. I mean, honestly, it's like why? Number one, I'm not out to impress anybody.
Yeah.
And at all, and the whole keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
It doesn't excite me at all, to be honest with you. And there's a lot of people like that.
Yep.
There's a lot of people out there like that, but there's more people, at least apparently, that are the other way.
Well, see, that's why what I'm going to do is this week I'm keeping my eyes on the Craigslist electronics section, because somebody's going to bring home a 60-inch plasma screen and want to get rid of their 40-inch.
Ancient. It'll say very old 2019 model. It doesn't have that extra speed button where it shuffles your playlists in less than half a second. So we're going to let it go for like 50 cents.
Well, okay, that'll work. We keep going the way it's going right now. They're going to have TVs up on the front counter at the store where they have a penny, take a penny.
Yeah.
Bucket of the have a TV, take a TV.
No, you'll have the little cubicle where they have the chewing gum, and right next to it, like a big box with TVs.
Yeah, it'll be like 19-inch TVs in there because they can't sell them. They got to give them away as change,
So, folks, I hope you. I think we're good. Yeah,
I think we're more than good. We kind of went all over the place, but what the heck, we usually do.
Well, I mean, at the end we did switch up a little bit, but it was all. I see it as all glued together, frankly.
Yeah.
We could talk about all sorts of stuff, and I see it all connected.
Okay, all right, if you say so.
Well,
I mean, I don't know how you connect Edgar Allan Poe to a plasma screen, but unless you're watching the Fall of the House of Usher on TV, or
well, I mean, it connects through our conversation going back through the past hour, and you'll see where we did the switch off. Because it connects actually through, you know what? We'd have to sit and listen back, but I'm sure it connects somehow.
It gives you something to think about when you write up the description.
Yeah. So, folks, check us out each Tuesday. We record live on YouTube at 9:30 Eastern Time, and that would be 6:30 Pacific Coast time.
Yep.
And we also have our Facebook page. I've already put, and which is called Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And I've already put in that link, which I think you'd find pretty interesting with Sylvester Stallone and the whole angle with the Edgar Allan. It's very well done, that documentary. And we also have
we do the Facebook. We talked about the YouTube. We didn't talk about Spreaker. If you head over to Spreaker, SPREAKER, like speaker, but with an extra R in there just to confuse me. You can head over there and join. You will get, everybody who joins gets a free 15-minute podcast every day. You can go online, speak your piece, pick up a few listeners, have a free 15-minute podcast just by joining up with Spreaker. That's Spreaker.com. And we have our website, TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com, sponsored by Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. Come on by, check us out, hit that contact us link, send us a message, tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you'd rather we shut up about, or what you'd rather we expand on and give our opinions about. That's trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. I think that we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.
Have a good one, y'all.